The board flipped to red at 11:47 p.m. and every flight out of O'Hare died at the same moment. I had been watching the woman in the next seat for 40 minutes. Charcoal coat, dark hair pinned back, a watch on her right wrist that caught the light each time she turned a page. She had not looked up once. Not when the gate agent's voice started shaking. Not when the man behind us swore at the ceiling. Not when the announcement came that no hotels within 50 miles had a room available. She closed her book. She turned. She looked at me for the first time in hours. She said, "I have a reservation. There is a second bed. If you want to hear uncensored, too hot for YouTube stories, check out my Patreon in the description. Tell us where you are watching from and subscribe." I stared at her. She did not look like a woman accustomed to having her offers questioned. She did not look like a woman accustomed to making them either, which was the more interesting thing. Her face was composed in a way that took effort and let the effort show. The way a person looks when they have just made a decision they did not plan to make and are watching themselves having made it. "You don't know me," I said. "I know enough," she said. "You have been sitting next to me for 3 hours and you have not once been on your phone for longer than 90 seconds. Your bag is between your feet, not on the seat. You watched the gate agent get yelled at and your jaw moved. You are tired and you are not a problem." That was the longest sentence anyone had said to me in a week. It was also the most accurate inventory anyone had taken of me in significantly longer than that. "I'm Quinn," I said. "Celine," she said. "Celine Ivor." She did not extend a hand. She picked up her coat instead. The coat was cashmere, charcoal. Expensive in the quiet way that expensive things are when the person wearing them does not need anyone to know. She put it on with the practiced motion of someone who put on a coat several times a day in several different cities and had stopped thinking about the gesture years ago. "The car is 2 minutes out," she said. "If you are coming." I was coming. I had decided I was coming the moment she had said the second sentence. The long one. The inventory one. The one that cataloged me with the precision of someone who had been paying more attention to me than I had registered. I picked up my camera bag. I picked up my jacket. I followed Celine Ivor out of the gate area into the cold corridor of an airport that had given up on us. She walked the way the most composed people walk. Not fast. Not slow. Economical. Her heels did not click against the tile because they were the kind of heels that were quieter than that. I followed at her elbow because following at her elbow felt like the right amount of distance for two strangers who had just agreed to share a hotel room because the weather had decided their plans for them. The car was a black SUV with a driver who knew her name. I was not surprised by this. I had clocked the watch and the coat and the specific stillness with which she had read her book through 3 hours of airport chaos, and I had constructed a working theory about who she was. The theory was, she was someone whose money was not new and whose temperament had been forged somewhere demanding. The driver's quiet recognition of her. "Ms. Ivor, ma'am, your associate's bag in the back?" Confirmed half of it. She slid into the back seat. I followed. The doors closed. The driver pulled away from the cell phone lot exit. The car smelled like leather and very faint perfume. Something restrained, something with cedar in it, and something colder underneath. The kind of scent that did not announce itself. The kind of scent that you only noticed after you had been sitting in it for a minute and then could not stop noticing. "How long is the drive?" I asked. "In this weather," she said, 40 minutes. She did not look at me. She was looking at her phone, sliding through emails the way people do when they need their hands occupied. The screen lit her face in the dark of the car, the line of her cheekbone, the shadow under her eye, the small movement at the corner of her mouth when she read something she did not like. I leaned my head against the window. The road was a black river. The city was a smear of red and gold in the wet glass. Somewhere out in the dark, every flight at O'Hare was canceled, and every hotel within a 50-mile radius was full. And I was in a car with a woman whose last name I had learned 3 minutes ago, and whose hotel room I was about to share. I was 30 years old. I had been awake for 19 hours. I had spent 4 days in a small Wisconsin town photographing a story about a closing paper mill for a magazine that paid late and well. I had a camera bag at my feet that was worth more than the car my parents had driven for a decade, and an apartment in Brooklyn that I had not slept in for 2 weeks, and an ex-girlfriend whose name I had finally stopped saying out loud, and I was tired in the specific way that comes from doing the work you love in conditions that are slowly grinding you down. I should have been more cautious about the woman next to me. I was not. "What do you do?" I asked. She did not look up from the phone. "I am an attorney. Mergers and acquisitions. I was in Minneapolis for a closing." That sounded like a sentence she had said into the phone of someone she had just met at a function several hundred times. "What is the closing?" I asked. She glanced at me sideways, the first real look since the airport. Her eyes were a darker gray than I had registered in the gate area, closer to slate than to silver. And they had the specific assessing quality of someone who was used to taking the measure of a room within 4 seconds of walking into it. "You're asking about the deal," she said. "I'm asking what you do all day," I said. A small pause. The corner of her mouth moved. 1 millimeter. "A regional grocery chain bought a smaller regional grocery chain," she said. "The closing took 9 months. The negotiating took longer than that. My role was making sure that nothing the smaller company had been hiding became my client's problem after the signature. Did anything become their problem?" "2 things," she said. "One was already public. The other was not." She did not elaborate. I had not expected her to. "You?" she asked. "Photographer," I said. "Documentary. I was in a Wisconsin town near the lake. There used to be a paper mill there. The mill is closing. Half the town has worked there for 3 generations. The story is what happens when the mill goes." She turned more fully toward me for the first time. That is not an attorney's question, I noticed. That was a real question. Her face had moved from the assessment register into something closer to interest, which was a register I had not seen on her yet. "What did you find?" she asked. "I found," I said, "that the people who already knew the mill was closing were the calmest. The people who were still waiting for an announcement that had been informally circulating for 6 months were the ones who couldn't sleep. The waiting was harder than the knowing." That was the story. Her eyes did not leave my face. "That sounds correct," she said. "I have learned," I said, "that the people most affected by something coming have usually figured it out before anyone tells them. They just need someone to confirm it." She looked at me a second longer. Then she turned her face toward the window. The slate eyes went back to the dark river of the road. I watched her profile in the smeared light, and I thought, I have just told her something that landed. I thought, I do not know what I just told her. The hotel was downtown. A tower. Lobby of marble and dark wood. The kind of lobby that exists in financial districts in cities like this one. Designed to make people who already had money feel reassured and to make people who did not have money feel small. Celine walked through it like she was crossing a hallway. The night shift concierge looked up. He did not say her name. He did say, "Miss Ivor, of course. Suite 4012. Your usual key configuration. 2 cards." She nodded. He looked at me, glanced down at his terminal, glanced back up. Did not, very professionally, allow his face to do anything. 2 cards, Celine said again, in a voice that did not have an edge in it but did not need one. He produced 2 key cards, slid them across in a small leather sleeve, said, "A pleasant evening to you both." We rode the elevator up. 40 floors. The car was mirrored. I watched her watch the floor counter, the small motion of her eyes tracking the numbers, and I watched, in the same mirror, my own face. And I did not look like a person who was about to share a hotel room with a stranger. I looked like a tired woman in a wet jacket carrying a camera bag. Which was what I was, and was not the whole inventory. She hit the button for the floor. Then she stood with her hands at her sides. In the specific way I was beginning to recognize was the way she stood when she was wading through something. Not impatient. Just present. Fully. In the moment of the elevator. You always stay here? I asked. When I am in this city, yes. How often is that? Once a month, she said. Sometimes more. Lonely, I said, before I could decide whether to say it. She did not answer for a beat. Then she said, a working hotel is not the same thing as a lonely one. They look similar from the outside. Then, after another beat. It is a fair observation, though. The doors opened on the 40th floor. The hallway was the kind of hallway that only exists in certain hotels in certain cities. Wide, carpeted in something charcoal and quiet, lit by sconces that produced a low, warm light that made everything look more expensive than it was. She walked to the end of the hallway. She tapped one of the cards against the door. The lock clicked. She held the door for me. I went in first. The suite was bigger than my apartment. A small entryway. A living area with a long sofa, 2 armchairs, a coffee table, a writing desk by a window that ran the full length of the wall. Beyond the writing desk, 2 doors, one to a bathroom, one to a bedroom. Through the open bedroom door, I could see what she had meant by 2 beds. 2 queens, separated by a low nightstand, a single lamp glowing between them. I had not thought, on the way over, about whether she was telling the truth about the second bed. I realized now that I had not thought about it, and that not thinking about it was its own kind of trust, and that the trust had been sitting in me already from the moment in the gate area when she had catalogued me with the long sentence. The bedroom is through there, she said behind me. Her voice was different in the suite than it had been in the car or the lobby, not softer, just more inside itself, less outward-facing. I have an early call. I will take the bed nearer the door if that is acceptable to you. It's acceptable, I said. I would like to shower, she said. There is a second bathroom off the bedroom. There are robes in both. There is a hotel menu on the desk if you are hungry. I have not eaten since the deposition this morning. It was almost midnight. The deposition this morning. I did the math on the day she had had. Flight into Minneapolis, deposition all day, attempted flight out, 3 hours in the gate area, the cancellation, the car, the hotel, this conversation. And I understood, with a small clean clarity, that the woman in front of me was running on a level of professional discipline that bordered on mechanical, and that the offer of the second bed had been the first non-mechanical thing she had done in approximately 14 hours. The understanding rearranged something in me. You should eat, I said. I'll order. What do you want? She paused. I do not, she said, like to be told what I should do. I know, I said. I'm doing it anyway. She looked at me. The slate eyes did the assessing thing for half a second. Then she said, a salad. Whatever they have. Vinaigrette on the side. A bottle of water. That is not a meal, I said. She said, it is the meal I want. Fine, I said. I'm getting myself a real one and you can have a bite if your salad disappoints you. She did then, the smallest possible thing with her mouth. The corner. 1 millimeter. The thing that would have, in the past 40 minutes, become a small recurring data point I was logging without telling myself I was logging it. She walked to the bedroom. She closed the door behind her. I heard, a moment later, the second bathroom door close. I stood in the suite alone. I picked up the menu. I called downstairs and ordered her salad and a steak frites for me, and a bottle of red wine that I had no business affording, but that the magazine was paying for anyway, under the per diem they had promised, would be honored. I was hanging up when I caught my reflection in the dark glass of the window across the room. I looked, in the glass, like a person who had just made a decision she had not planned to make. I was watching myself having made it. I went into the bedroom. I went to the second bathroom. I showered for a long time. The water in this hotel was the temperature you wanted it to be without negotiation, and the soap was something with sandalwood in it and something paler underneath. And I stood under it for 10 minutes with my eyes closed, thinking about the long sentence she had said in the gate area. Your jaw moved. You are tired and you are not a problem. I put on one of the robes. The robe was thick and white, and weighed more than my coat. I came out of the bathroom into the bedroom. The other bathroom door was still closed. I could hear the shower running on the other side of the wall. I stood for a moment in the dim bedroom. 2 beds, 1 nightstand, the lamp between them. Through the wall, a woman I had met 4 hours ago was washing her hands of a 14-hour day in the steam of a shower I could not see. I went back out into the living area to wait for the food. The room service knock came at midnight. I tipped the man heavily on the magazine's account because he had brought a folded white tablecloth and laid out the plates with the formal care of a person who had decided that doing the job correctly was the only useful response to working the late shift in a hotel where the elevator was full of refugees from canceled flights. He set the wine down. He set the bottle of water down. He said, "Good night, miss," and left. Celine came out of the bedroom in the other robe. Her hair was down and damp. The face I had been watching in the gate area for 3 hours was the face of a woman who had armored herself for a long professional day. The face I was looking at now was the face she lived in when nobody was watching. I was watching. Her hair was darker wet than dry. Loose, uncombed, the kind of loose that comes from a towel and not a styling product. Her face without the structure of the pinned hair was less sharp and more present. She looked younger than she had at the airport. Not young, exactly, but accessible. She looked like a person. She paused in the doorway when she saw the tablecloth. "That is," she said, "more than a salad." "I had a magazine card," I said. "Eat." She came to the table. She sat. She picked up the cloth napkin and put it in her lap. She glanced at the wine bottle. She glanced at me. "You ordered wine?" she said. I ordered wine. "I have a flight at 6, she said. "The flight is not a real flight," I said. "They will cancel it. The storm is not over until tomorrow afternoon. You can drink 1 glass and sleep." She looked at me for a long beat. "You are very confident," she said, "about the weather." "I was a documentary photographer for 8 years before I was very good at it," I said. "I have spent more time in airports than in my apartment. I know what a storm cell does to a hub. Your 6 a.m. flight is not a flight. It is an aspiration." The corner of her mouth, again. 1 millimeter. I was beginning to understand that the corner of her mouth was where she put the things she would not say with the rest of her face. She let me pour her a glass. We ate. The salad was an actual salad with effort behind it. The kind of salad that came from a hotel kitchen that was not, in fact, contemptuous of salads. And I watched her eat it with the focused efficiency she brought to every other physical act. She did not pick at it. She did not perform the eating. She ate because she was hungry and because she had decided to eat. And when she had finished, she set her fork down at a precise angle on the side of the plate. "You said you had not eaten since the deposition this morning," I said. She nodded. "When you say deposition," I said, "do you mean a deposition you took? Or a deposition you gave?" She tilted her head slightly. "I took it. From the chief financial officer of a company we are acquiring. He was disclosing something he should have disclosed 2 months ago." "Did he?" She considered the question. "Eventually," she said. "Not initially. What does it cost a person to disclose something they have been hiding for 2 months when an attorney is asking the questions?" She looked at me. The look had quality. Surface down. "Their composure?" she said. "Their preparation." Eventually, their understanding of who they thought they were. By the end of a deposition like that one, the person across the table is not the person who walked into the room. "You broke a man this morning," I said. "I extracted the truth from a man who had structured an entire career around not telling it," she said. "Whether that broke him is not a question I am qualified to answer." She picked up her wine glass. "You are good at it," I said. "I have to be," she said. We ate. I told her about the mill and the town and the people I had photographed. A woman who had worked the same machine for 31 years and who described it in the language she would use to describe a difficult sibling. A man who had been hired the week the mill announced layoffs and was angry in the precise way people are angry when they have been told a story that turns out not to be true. I told her about the light in Wisconsin in late autumn. Gray, gold under it. The specific quality of low light through wet pine. And I told her about the difficulty of photographing grief that has not yet arrived. She listened. She listened the way she had listened in the car, except more so. She did not nod. She did not encourage. She simply listened, with the same focused stillness that I imagined she used in conference rooms when she was trying to determine whether the person across from her was telling her the whole truth. When I was done, she said, "You photograph people who are about to lose something. That is your subject." I had not, in the 8 years I had been doing this, ever heard my subject summarized in 9 words by someone who had known me for 4 hours. "Yes," I said. She looked at her wine. "Why?" she asked. I thought about it. I thought about it in front of her, with the quiet of the suite around us, and the lights of Chicago through the window, with the steak nearly gone and the wine half finished, and the woman across from me watching me think. Because, I said, by the time something is gone, no one is paying attention to the people it left behind. The story is finished. The photograph that gets remembered is the photograph of the gone thing. I want the photograph of the people. I want the photograph from before, the one where they are still trying to hold on to the version of themselves that includes the thing. She set the glass down very carefully. She said, "That is a good answer." There was a pause that went 1 beat longer than it had any reason to. The kind of pause that I had been logging without admitting I was logging it. The kind of pause in which 2 people are aware that something has just been said that is more honest than the situation strictly required, and neither of them is certain what to do with the surplus. I stood up. I went to the window. The window was floor to ceiling. The city below was an arrangement of gold and red and the wet shine of streets that had been raining on for hours. The storm was still moving over the lake. The clouds were low and lit from below by the lights of the buildings. Somewhere down there, a city of 3 million people was carrying on with its night, and I was 40 floors up in a robe with a stranger I had not stopped looking at. She came to the window. She did not stand close to me. She stood at her own pane of glass, 2 steps to my right, looking out the same way I was looking out. I could see her reflection in my pane and my reflection in her pane, and the city behind both, layered. "This is the part of the night," she said after a moment, "when I usually answer the last of my emails and go to bed." "Are you going to do that?" I asked. "No," she said. "Why not?" She looked at the city. She did not look at me. "Because the woman who answers the last of her emails before bed is the woman I am during a working day," she said. "And it is not currently a working day, and you are interesting, and I am tired in a way that is not interested in being efficient." The honesty of it surprised me. Not the content, the delivery. She had said it the way she said everything, with the slight precision of a woman who built sentences for a living. But the sentence itself was a sentence she would not have said in any other room, in any other configuration of the night. "What is your wife doing tonight?" I asked. She turned her head. Quickly. The fastest movement I had seen her make. "I am not married," she said. "I noticed your right wrist," I said. "Most married women I know wear the rings on the left and the watch on the right. You do not wear a ring." She held my gaze. "I was married," she said, "for 9 years. We separated 14 months ago. The divorce was finalized in February. I keep the watch on the right because I started doing that when I stopped wearing the ring, and I have not yet decided whether to stop." "I am sorry," I said. Do not be sorry, she said. The marriage was over for longer than 14 months. The legal part finished after the rest of it. Did you leave? Or did she? Celine's face did the slightest possible thing, a single shift in the muscle along her jaw. I knew already, before she said it, that the answer was hard. She left, Celine said, for someone we both knew. I said nothing. There was nothing useful to say. I had learned, in 8 years of photographing people who had just lost something, that the worst thing you could do was rush into the silence that came after a person told you the central fact of the worst part of their year. Silence was the only correct response. Silence was a place for the other person to put the rest of what they wanted to say. After a moment, she said, "It was 3 years ago that it actually ended. I just did not know it then. I know it now." "I am sorry anyway," I said. She nodded. We stood at the window. I watched a city bus crawl through a flooded intersection 40 floors below. I watched a small constellation of red lights at the airport. Planes that would not be flying, people who would not be sleeping in their own beds tonight. I watched, in the reflection of the window, the woman I had agreed to share a room with stand very still and absorb a question she had not, presumably, told a stranger the answer to in some time. "Why did you tell me that?" I asked. Celine was quiet for a moment. "Because you asked," she said. "And because the person who used to know the answer to that question is not someone I speak to anymore. And because I am tired. And because you are the photographer who takes pictures of people who are about to lose something, and I have already lost the thing, and I think you know what to do with that information." "I do," I said. She looked at me. The slate eyes were the most readable I had seen them. "What do you do with it?" she asked. "I do not photograph it," I said. "I make sure the person who told me knows I heard." "I heard it," I said. "I heard it." Her shoulders, which I had not realized were doing anything, came down half an inch. The half inch was visible only to me, only in the reflection, only because I had been watching her for almost 5 hours and had built, in that time, the specific kind of attention that registers half inches. She said, "Thank you." We stayed at the window for another minute. Then she said, "I should sleep. The aspiration flight is at 6. If you are correct about the weather, I will have a more honest understanding of my morning at 4:30, when I check the airline app and realize you were right." "You were right" is a useful sentence, I said. You should practice saying it. The corner of her mouth, again. 1 millimeter. "You were right," she said, very softly, into the window. "I'll practice." We turned away from the glass. I went to my bag and got out the soft pants and old t-shirt I slept in. She went to the bedroom. I changed in the living room because the second bathroom required walking through her room, and I was not yet prepared to walk through her room. When I came in, she was already in her bed. The lamp between us turned down to the lowest possible setting, the duvet folded back across her lap, a paperback open on her thigh. She had put on a dark t-shirt to sleep in. The bare arms surprised me. I had spent 5 hours looking at the cashmere coat and the white blouse and the watch on the right wrist, and the bare arms were a piece of information I had not been prepared to process. They were not muscular, and they were not delicate. They were the arms of a person who walked a lot and lifted nothing. I climbed into the second bed. The lamp made the space between us into a soft amber tint. "What are you reading?" I asked. She tilted the book so I could see the cover. It was a novel. A literary one. Something in translation. "Any good?" I asked. "It is making me feel," she said, "several things I was not in the mood to feel tonight." "Why are you still reading it?" "Because," she said, "I am stubborn." I laughed. She did not turn her head, but I saw, in the lamplight, that the corner of her mouth did the thing. "Celine," I said. She turned her head this time. "What was the thing the man was hiding?" I asked. "The CFO. In the deposition." She looked at me for a long beat. "You will not believe me," she said. "Try me." He was, she said, having an affair with the chief operating officer's wife, and the COO was using company funds to pay a private investigator to confirm it. The financial irregularities I was hired to find had nothing to do with the merger. The company was hiding a personal scandal that had cost them 7 figures of cash flow. I stared at her. The lawyers I work with do not photograph well, she said, but the stories occasionally do. I am going to be thinking about this for several days, I said. Welcome to my profession, she said. I lay there. The lamp glowed. The storm moved across the city in some still loud way that we could not hear from 40 floors up. I could hear the sound of her breathing, slow and steady, 2 feet away. Celine, I said. Yes. You said in the gate area that I had been sitting next to you for 3 hours and was not on my phone for more than 90 seconds at a time. I said that. You also said your jaw moved when the gate agent was getting yelled at, and that you were tired and not a problem. I said that. You were watching me, I said. A long pause. Yes, she said. For how long? Of the 3 hours, she said, approximately 2.5. I lay very still. My heart did something that it had not done in a 1.5 years. The lamp glowed. The bed beside me held a woman who had just told me that she had been watching me for 2.5 hours in an airport gate area without ever once turning a page of her book, which had, I now realized, been propped open in her lap as a prop. Why? I asked. Because, Celine said, the gate area was full, and you were the most still thing in it. I find stillness restful. I had been in a deposition all day. I had wanted to go to bed since 2 in the afternoon. I sat next to you because the seats around you were the only seats in the gate area where the noise was not coming from the people sitting in them. After about 10 minutes, I realized I was not, in fact, reading. I was watching you. I decided to keep watching you because the alternative was reading a novel that was making me feel things I did not want to feel. She paused. That is the long version, she said. The short version is the one I gave you at the gate. I am not a problem, I said. You are not a problem, she said. That is one of the things I noticed. What are the other things? I asked. She turned her head fully toward me on the pillow. The lamplight was soft on the side of her face. Her hair was drying in a wave I had not seen before. She looked, on the pillow in the dim amber, like a different person from the one I had followed out of the airport. And yet, she was the same person. And I had been watching the architecture of that sameness for 5 hours, and I was now lying in a bed 3 feet from her own, and the whole arrangement was something I had not anticipated when the board had flipped to red at 11:47 p.m. and every flight had died at the same moment. The other things, she said, can wait until the morning. Why? Because, she said, if I tell you the other things tonight, I will have given you everything I have noticed about you in 5 hours, and there will be nothing left for the breakfast we have not yet decided we are having. I will be having breakfast with you, I said. The corner of her mouth moved. Then I will keep some of the noticing in reserve, she said. She reached over and turned off the lamp. The room went into the dark. The dark was not full dark. The stormlit clouds outside threw a low amber wash through the curtains, and I could still see, very faintly, the shape of her on the second pillow. Celine, I said. Yes. If they cancel your flight in the morning, what will you do? I will stay another night, she said. Probably. If they cancel mine? She was quiet for a moment. Then I will stay another night, she said. And I will not be sleeping alone. The sentence sat in the dark between us. It was not, technically, an invitation. It was, technically, a logistical observation. But the temperature in the room was not the temperature of a logistical observation, and the stillness on the second pillow was not the stillness of a person who had said something logistical, and I lay in my bed 3 feet away with my face turned toward the dim amber outline of hers, and felt my heart do the thing it had done before, but more so. Celine, I said. Yes, she said. What happens if neither of our flights gets canceled? She did not answer for a long time. The dark held us. The storm worked the city below. 40 floors down, an O'Hare Gate area was full of people on the phones, to spouses they were going to be late getting home to, and I was lying in a bed in the dark, 3 feet from a woman whose name I had learned 6 hours ago, asking her what would happen if the storm cleared by sunrise. If neither of our flights gets cancelled, Celine said finally, then we will go to the airport in the same car, and we will sit in the same gate area, and you will be on a different plane than I will be, and we will land in the same city, and you will go to your apartment and I will go to mine. And at some point in the next 4 to 6 days, depending on how long my schedule takes to recover from this trip, I will text you and ask if you are free for dinner. I did not say anything. That is, she said, the thing I have decided in the last 2 hours. When did you decide it? I asked. Around the time you said the people most affected by something coming have usually figured it out before anyone tells them, she said. They just need someone to confirm it. The dark got smaller, or the room got smaller, or my chest got smaller. Some of those. I am the person, she said, who has been waiting for someone to confirm something I figured out a long time ago. What did you figure out? I asked. That, she said, can wait until morning too. I lay there, the amber wash on the ceiling, the breath on the second pillow. The watch she had presumably taken off and set on the nightstand between us. I could see the small dark shape of it in the dim, ticking faintly, the only sound in the room besides the breathing. Celine, I said. Yes. If your flight is cancelled in the morning, I said, and mine is not, I will not be on it. Her breath caught. Just one beat. Just enough. Quinn, she said. She had not used my name yet. Not once. Not in the gate area. Not in the car. Not in the suite. Not in the dark. She had said you and you have and the woman who. She had not, until just now, said my name. When she said it now, in the dark, 2 feet away, in a voice that was lower than I had heard it, in a register that had nothing to do with the deposition or the closing or the cashmere coat, my name was not a name. My name was a small admitted thing that she had been holding in her mouth for 5 hours and was, finally, allowing to leave. I could hear, in the dark, the precise sound of a woman deciding what to do with a question she had not, until tonight, allowed herself to be asked. You should sleep, she said. I should sleep, I agreed. A pause. But I am not going to, she said. Neither am I said. The watch on the nightstand ticked. The storm worked the city. The amber wash held the ceiling, and somewhere in the dark between the 2 beds, in the 3 feet of space that had opened up around the place where she had said my name, a question was sitting that I had been waiting to ask for the better part of 6 hours. Celine, I said. Yes. What would have happened, I said, if you had not offered me the second bed? She did not answer for a long time. When she did, her voice was the smallest I had heard it. I would have driven to this hotel, she said, in the same car. I would have come up to this suite alone. I would have ordered a salad I was not going to eat. I would have stood at that window and looked at the city, and thought about a woman in a gate area I had been watching for 3 hours, and did not, for any reason I was prepared to admit, want to leave behind. And I would have gone to bed angry at myself for having let her leave, and I would have gotten on a plane in the morning and gone home, and I would have spent the next 4 to 6 days texting myself the kind of justifications I have spent the last 14 months telling myself I no longer need. I closed my eyes. What changed? I asked. I closed the book, she said. I had been pretending to read it for 2.5 hours. I closed it because I had finally accepted that I was not going to read it, and that the woman in the next seat was not, in any version of the night I could currently imagine, going to be a stranger I left behind in a gate area. So you offered the second bed, I said. Yes. That was a brave thing, I said. It was a terrified thing, she said. The two are sometimes the same thing. The dark got softer. Or my chest opened. Or the watch on the nightstand stopped very briefly ticking. Celine, I said. Yes. I am very glad you closed the book. A pause. Long. The sound of breath on the second pillow. Slower now, but not the sleep slow. The honest slow. So am I, she said. I lay in the dark for a long time with my eyes open, watching the amber wash on the ceiling, listening to the storm and the watch, and the breath on the second pillow. I did not sleep. I do not believe she did either. At some point, much later, I heard her shift. The soft sound of a woman turning toward the nightstand and turning back, and settling. I know you are awake, she said into the dark. I know you are too, I said. If I do not say something, she said, in the next 30 seconds, I am going to say it tomorrow morning over breakfast, and I am going to regret not saying it now. Then say it now, I said. The dark held us. The storm held the city. The watch held the second between one tick and the next. I have spent 14 months, she said, learning how to be alone again. I am very good at it. I have a routine. I have a building I live in and a building I work in, and a route between them. I have a couch I read on, and a kitchen I cook in, and a bed I sleep in. I have constructed, with significant effort, a life that does not require the presence of a specific other person in order to feel complete. I am proud of that life. It was hard to build. A pause. But I have not, she said, in 14 months, allowed any version of that life to include the sentence I am about to say. What sentence is that? I asked. She breathed. I would like, she said, to know you. Not as a person who shared a hotel room with me during a storm. As a person whose work I want to see. Whose city I want to be in. Whose dinner I want to have. Repeatedly. Until that becomes its own thing rather than the ending of this story. I felt, in the dark, my hand move toward the edge of my mattress without permission. Celine, I said. Yes, you are going to have to say that one more time in the morning, I said. Why? Because, I said, I am going to want to remember exactly how you said it. She made a sound that was almost a laugh. Quiet. Cracked. I will say it again, she said, at breakfast, with more light on it. We did not say anything for a long time after that. Eventually her breathing did slow. I do not know if she actually slept. I know that I lay in the dark for another hour at least, watching the amber wash, listening to the storm, thinking about the woman 2 feet away who had spent 14 months learning to be alone and had told me, on the first night I had ever met her, that she had something else she now wanted. I was thinking about this when my phone, on my nightstand, lit up with a notification. My 6:30 flight had been canceled. I closed the phone screen so the light would not wake her. I looked across at her in the dim. I could see, faintly, her face on the pillow, eyes closed, the line of her jaw softer than it had been at any point during the day. Hers would be canceled too. I knew it the way I knew weather. Hers would be canceled and we would both still be here in the morning, and she would say the sentence again with more light on it, and I would have my answer ready. I lay back in my bed. The storm worked the city. The watch on the nightstand between us ticked, very steadily, into the dark. I must have slept eventually, because at 4:40 in the morning I was woken by my phone, vibrating against the wood of the nightstand, and the dim amber wash on the ceiling was a different amber. Colder, closer to gray, the stormlight fading toward the unconvincing pre-dawn that hotels fed by snow systems produce in the hours before anyone is awake. I picked up the phone. Celine's flight had been canceled. The notification was on my screen because I had, at some point in the night, opened the airline app and added her flight number to my watch list, which was a thing I had not, until that moment, remembered doing. I lay back on the pillow. Across the small distance between the beds, I heard her breathing change. Not waking, exactly. The slight shift of a person whose sleep was not deep enough to survive the click of a phone screen at 4:40. I know, she said softly. I felt mine go. Yours? I asked. Vibration on the nightstand at 4:37, she said. I have been awake since. Why didn't you say anything? Because, she said, I was not ready yet to hear what you would say back. The room was quiet. The watch on her nightstand ticked. The radiator under the window hissed once and was silent, Somewhere very far below us, the city was making the sounds of a storm it had survived, but not yet finished. The distant scrape of a plow, the faint hum of an airport that had cancelled the morning and was already trying to recover the afternoon. "What were you afraid I would say?" I asked. "That you had changed your mind," she said. "I had not changed my mind," I said. A long pause. "I know that now," she said. The amber wash on the ceiling lightened by 1 degree. The coldest gray of the pre-dawn began to push the stormlight back. I lay in the dim with my hand on my chest, feeling my own heartbeat, listening to a woman 2 feet away who had been awake longer than I and had not said anything because she had not been ready to hear me say something I had not been going to say. We both stayed in our beds. Neither of us moved for a long time. The storm receded by another degree. The watch ticked. After what felt like an hour but was probably 20 minutes, Celine said, "You should know that I have not done this before." "Done what before?" I asked. "Any of this," she said. "The offer, the conversation, the window, the dark? None of it. I have, in 14 months, gone on 3 dinners with 3 different people, all of whom I knew through work, all of whom asked. I went because my therapist suggested I make myself available to the world again. I came home from each of them and crossed them off a list in my head and did not call any of them back. I am very practiced at not doing this. What I have not had practice in, until last night, is doing it." I closed my eyes. "What changed?" I asked. "I told you what changed," she said. I closed the book. "Why did you close it, though?" I asked. "Really? The honest version." She was quiet for a beat. "Because," she said, "when the gate agent was being yelled at, your jaw moved, and I caught the way your jaw moved. And I knew you were not angry at the agent. You were angry on her behalf. You were angry at the man who was yelling. And there was something in the way you sat with your anger, without raising it, without performing it, without making it anyone else's problem, that I have not seen in a person in a very long time." And I closed the book because I had decided at that moment that the woman beside me was not, in any version of the night I could imagine, a stranger I was prepared to leave behind. I opened my eyes. "You decided that based on my jaw," I said. "I decided that," she said, "based on the quality of attention you brought to a moment that did not concern you. The jaw was the visible part. The decision was about the rest." I turned my head on the pillow toward her. She had turned hers toward me at some point in the dark, and now in the gray amber light, 2 feet away, she was looking at me with the slate eyes of a woman who had told me too much in 14 hours and was not, this time, going to hide from it. "Celine," I said. "Yes. Come here." She did not move. "I do not," she said carefully, "want to begin this in a hurry." "I do not want it begun in a hurry either," I said. "Come here." She held my gaze for one long beat. Then she got up, very slowly, and crossed the small distance between the beds and sat on the edge of mine. She did not lie down. She sat on the edge with her bare feet on the carpet and her hands in her lap, and she looked at me with the careful composure of a woman who had spent 14 months learning not to want anything and was, in this moment, trying to remember the shape of wanting something and not being broken by it. I sat up against my pillows. I looked at her face in the dim. The hair that had dried in a wave overnight. The eyes that were tired and still slate. The line of her shoulder under the dark t-shirt. I said, "I am not asking you to begin anything tonight." She nodded slightly. "I am," I said, "asking you to sit on the edge of this bed for as long as you would like to sit on the edge of this bed, and to let me look at you, and to let me hold your hand, and to let nothing else happen until both of us have slept and eaten and decided in the daylight what we want." She closed her eyes. She put her hand, palm up, on the duvet between us. I put my hand in hers. Her fingers were colder than I expected. They warmed under mine in less than a minute. I held her hand. She held mine. Her thumb moved once, very slightly, across the back of my knuckles, and then she stopped it as if she had not given it permission. I am not going anywhere, I said. I know, she said. Go back to your bed, I said. Sleep, if you can. We have several hours before there is anything to decide. She opened her eyes. She brought my hand up, slowly, to her mouth. She did not kiss it. She held the back of my hand against her lips for one breath, and then another. And then she let it go, and stood, and went back to her own bed without looking at me, and she lay down and pulled the duvet up to her shoulders and faced the window. I lay back against my pillows. My hand was warm where her mouth had not, exactly, kissed it. I slept. When I woke, it was nearly 9. The storm had passed. The window held a flat gray-white sky and a city slow under new snow. The bed across from me was empty, made, the duvet smoothed back into place with the kind of military efficiency that came from a person who could not, even on a snowed-in morning, leave a bed unmade. I heard her in the living room. She was on the phone, her voice low and professional, the M&A voice, the one I had not heard in person and had only inferred from the way she had described the deposition. She was rescheduling something. She was rescheduling several things by the sound of it. With the calm efficiency of a woman who rescheduled things for a living and had built her relationship with chaos on the foundation of being more organized than the chaos was. I got up. I put on the robe. I came out into the living room. She was at the desk, in a clean white blouse and her dark slacks, her hair still down. I noticed, without comment, that she had not pinned it, and she was finishing the call. She raised one hand to me as I came in. Yes, she said into the phone. Reschedule the call to Thursday. I will be in the office by then. Yes. Thank you, Margaret. She set the phone down. She turned around. She looked at me, robed, sleep-creased, hair in some configuration I could not see and did not care about. And she said, "Good morning, Quinn." "Good morning," I said. She had ordered breakfast, coffee in a French press, eggs, bread, a small bowl of fruit. The same white tablecloth as last night, laid by the same morning's steward, with the same formal care. She poured me a coffee without asking how I took it because she had watched me make my own at some point in the past 14 hours and had logged the answer. I took the coffee. "Black," she said. I noticed, I said. "That you noticed." She smiled. Not a millimeter smile, a small real one side of her mouth. Brief, gone. We ate. The morning light was the kind of post-storm light that cities only produce after a heavy snow, pale even, gold at the edges where it caught the windows of the building across the street. Celine was on her second cup of coffee when she said, very quietly, almost into the cup, "You wanted me to say it again." "I did," I said. "With more light on it," she said. "Yes." She set the cup down. "I would like," she said, "to know you. Not as the person who shared a hotel room with me during a storm, as the person whose work I want to see, whose city I want to be in, whose dinner I want to have. Repeatedly, until that becomes its own thing rather than the ending of this story." She held my eyes while she said it. The light was, in fact, on it. The kindness in her face did not flinch from being seen. "That is," I said, "exactly how you said it last night." "I have been practicing," she said. "I love you a little for practicing," I said. Without thinking. The sentence was out before I had decided to say it. She breathed in once, sharply, and then out, slowly. She set the coffee cup down at a precise angle on the saucer. She did not, immediately, answer. "Quinn," she said. "Sorry," I said. It was, she said, a sentence I had not prepared for. "I am asking for a moment to receive it." I waited. I drank my coffee. After a beat, she said, "I love you a little too. Already. For reasons I am not yet prepared to defend, but which are, nevertheless, true." We were quiet for a while. Then I said, "Are we going to leave this room today?" She said, "We have to. The hotel will let me extend, But I have a meeting I cannot reschedule on Friday in New York, and we need to get on a plane this evening if there is one. Also, if we stay in this room all day, we will have begun this in a hurry, and I have made you a promise. I want to see this city in the snow, I said. We can, she said. There is a coat in the closet that will fit you. The hotel keeps one for guests whose luggage has been lost. It is meant for emergencies. This is an emergency, I said. The corner of her mouth, again. 1 millimeter. Get dressed, she said. We walked. It is not, in the end, what I expected to happen on a snowed-in Wednesday morning in Chicago. To walk through a city under fresh white with a woman I had known for 15 hours, in a borrowed coat from a hotel closet, with my camera bag slung across my body because I do not, ever, leave a hotel room without my camera bag. We walked along the river. We walked under a bridge where the iron struts were furred with the snow that had drifted in horizontal during the night. We walked past a small bakery that had opened despite the storm, because the woman who owned it had grown up in a country where bakeries did not, in fact, close for weather. And we went in, and Celine bought 2 pastries and 2 more coffees, and we stood at a small high table by the window eating in a comfortable quiet that did not, at any point, feel like the kind of quiet that needed to be filled. Outside the bakery window, a man was walking a small dog through snow that came up to the dog's chest. The dog was extremely happy about this. Celine watched the dog. Her face, in the watching of the dog, did the thing that I had been waiting to see her face do. It relaxed. You like dogs, I said. I had a dog, she said. She lived with my ex-wife after the separation. She died last spring. I have not, since, decided whether to get another one. I think I am close to deciding. What was her name? Margot, Celine said. You named a dog Margot, I said. I named a dog Margot, she said. She was a small dog with a great deal of opinion and the demeanor of a French film director. The name was correct. I laughed. Celine's mouth again did the thing. I took her picture, without asking. The camera came up off my hip, and I had it before she had moved, and I caught her face in the second of warmth between the dog at the window and the moment she would have, normally, composed her face for being looked at. She did not flinch when she heard the shutter. She looked at me afterward, eyebrows slightly raised. Sorry, I said. I should have asked. Did you ask the woman at the paper mill before you photographed her? She asked. No, I said. Then do not start by asking me, she said. I did not say anything for a moment. I did, I said. Ask the woman at the paper mill afterward. I showed her the photograph and asked if she wanted me to keep it. She said yes. Celine held my eyes. Show it to me later, she said. I will tell you if I want you to keep it. I will, I said. We walked back along the river. The plow trucks were out in earnest by now, scraping the avenues, throwing slurry up against the curbs. The city was waking up in the disordered way that cities wake up after storms. Slowly, by neighborhood, in patches of activity around the businesses that had decided to open and the people who had decided to walk to work despite the snow. We walked. Her gloved hand brushed mine once, accidentally. Then again, less accidentally. The third time she let it stay, our fingers tangling briefly through the leather and the wool, before either of us was committed enough to call it a held hand. The fourth time she slipped her hand into mine without comment, and we walked the rest of the way back to the hotel with her hand in mine, 2 women in long coats in fresh snow on a Wednesday morning, making no announcement about anything to anyone, including ourselves. Her phone rang in the lobby. She let go of my hand to answer it. The look on her face when she saw the screen was the first composed look I had seen from her since she had said good morning at breakfast. I should take this, she said. Take it, I said. I went to the elevator. I rode up alone. I let myself into the suite with the second key card. I stood in the entryway and listened, through the closed door, to the very faint sound of her in the lobby downstairs. Not the words, just the cadence. And I knew, the way I know weather, that the call was someone who had a claim on her that she had not, in 15 hours, let me know existed. She came up after 15 minutes. She closed the door behind her. She did not take off her coat. She stood in the entryway with her gloves still in her left hand and the slate in her eyes pulled all the way down. That was, she said carefully, a person from my old life. Old life? How old? I asked. 3 weeks ago old, she said. I sat down on the arm of the sofa. Tell me, I said. It was, she said, a man named David Crane. He is the husband of the woman I was married to. They have been married for 6 months. He called to ask whether I would be available to provide some context about a matter that has come up in their accounting. The matter involves a small joint account that I forgot to close after the divorce. He was, ostensibly, calling on a logistical matter. Ostensibly, I said. Ostensibly, she said. He was actually calling because she asked him to. She has been calling me through him for 4 months now. He believes he is helping her wrap up loose ends. He is, in fact, a delivery system. What does she want? I asked. I do not know, Celine said. I have not asked. I have not picked up the phone when she has called directly. I have not responded to the messages. I have, until this morning, also let David's calls go to voicemail when he has called on her behalf. Why did you pick up this morning? I asked. The slate eyes went somewhere I had not seen them go yet. Not down. Not away. Inward. Into a place she was apparently visiting, briefly, against her own preference. Because, she said, I was happy in a bakery a half hour ago, and I was holding the hand of a woman I have known for 16 hours in a snowy lobby, and I picked up the phone because some reflex inside me wanted to confirm that the version of my life that includes those two facts is real, and not, in some way, a thing I have made up to escape from the version that includes him calling. Did picking up confirm it? I asked. She closed her eyes. It confirmed, she said, that I am still afraid of her voice. I am still afraid of the particular way she could, in 9 years of marriage, make me believe a thing was my fault when it was not. He is not her, but he is calling because she asked. And the 30 seconds during which I was on the phone with him in the lobby, I felt every one of those 9 years arrive at once. What did you say to him? I asked. I said, I do not handle joint account closures over the phone. Send the relevant documentation to my attorney. And I hung up. That was the right thing to say, I said. It was, she said, a sentence I have rehearsed for 9 months. She still had not taken off her coat. I stood up. I crossed the entryway. I took her gloves out of her hand and set them on the small console table. I unbuttoned the top button of her coat. I unbuttoned the next. She watched me do it without moving. When the coat was open, I slid it off her shoulders and hung it on the brass hook by the door. I took my own coat off and hung it on the second hook. I took her hand again, the way I had taken it on the avenue, and I led her into the living room and I sat on the sofa, and I pulled her down to sit beside me. She sat. She put her hands in her lap. I want to tell you something, I said, about why I asked you to sit on the edge of the bed last night and not lie down. I am listening, she said. I broke up with my girlfriend a 1.5 years ago, I said. We had been together for 4 years. She was a very kind person who had never, in her life, intentionally hurt anyone. And she was also a person whose kindness had a price, which was that she could not stand to be held accountable for anything. When I started asking her to be accountable for the things that were going wrong between us, she told me I was building a case against her. Then she told me I was making her feel unsafe. Then she ended it, because she had decided I was the unsafe person, which was the one move she had been holding back to use, if she ever needed it. Celine was very still beside me. For about 3 months after, I said, I believed her. I believed I was the unsafe person. I had spent 4 years next to a person whose central reflex was to convert any difficulty into evidence of someone else's wrongdoing, and I had, in those 4 years, learned to do the same to myself when she did it to me. It took 6 months of being alone, and quite a lot of therapy, and eventually a long trip to a small town in Oregon for a magazine assignment, before I could look at the 4 years honestly and understand that I had not, in fact, been the unsafe person. I had been the only person in the relationship who had been willing to name the difficulty. Celine's hand moved on her thigh. A very small motion. Open. Closed. I have not, since, I said, dated anyone. I have gone to dinners. I have flirted in airports. I have not let any of it continue past the night it began. Last night was the first time, in a year and a half, that I let a stranger know me past the point of plausibly forgetting her in the morning. Why? She asked. Because, I said, you said your jaw moved and you were tired and you were not a problem. She turned to look at me. I have spent a year and a half, I said, working very hard not to be a problem. To anyone. To myself. To the woman who told me I was. And I had stopped, at some point, distinguishing between not being a problem and not being present. I had become a person who did not take up space. Last night, in the gate area, you cataloged me as a person who had not been on her phone for more than 90 seconds at a time, whose bag was between her feet and not on the seat, who had watched the gate agent get yelled at, and whose jaw had moved. You saw a person who was not a problem and who was, also, present. You saw both at once. I do not know if you can understand what that felt like. I can, she said. We sat. The clock on the wall above the desk moved. Somewhere, very faintly, the wind continued to push the last of the storm out across the lake. I asked you to sit on the edge of the bed last night, I said, because I wanted you to. Because I have wanted you to since approximately the moment in the car when you turned and asked what I had found in the Wisconsin town. Because I trust the shape of what I want when it shows up like that. But I did not want to lie down with you last night because I have, exactly once before, made a decision in the dark that I did not, in the morning, want to have made. I am not going to do that again. Not with you. I see, she said. The phone call, I said, does not change what I asked you last night. It changes the timing. She looked at me. The slate eyes were the most readable I had seen them since the bedroom in the dark. You are saying, she said, that you are not going to let me retreat into the call. I am saying, I said, that you can retreat into the call. I am saying that if you retreat into the call, I will still be here. I am also saying that I have a 6 p.m. flight that may or may not happen, and a New York apartment, and a phone with which I will continue to text you whether or not you retreat. The call is, in the long run, not a problem. She looked at her hands. Quinn, she said. Yes. I am going to say something, she said, that is going to require you to make a decision. Say it, I said. She lifted her eyes. I do not, she said, want to retreat into the call. I want to retreat into you. I have wanted that since approximately the moment in the car, when you said the people most affected by something coming have usually figured it out before anyone tells them. I have spent the morning since then trying not to want it. I am not, at present, succeeding. I felt something in my chest do the shape of a hand opening. Celine, I said. Yes. Come here, I said again. With the meaning I had not, last night, allowed it to have. She came. I will tell you this much because I am not going to be coy about it. She leaned across the small distance on the sofa and she kissed me. Slowly, the way the most composed people do everything, with both hands somewhere they could be seen and her face an inch from mine before she actually closed the inch. The kiss was patient. It was earned by approximately 18 hours of restraint on her part and a year and a half of careful relearning on mine. And it tasted faintly like coffee and the snow on the air outside the bakery window, and her hand came up at some point and rested at my jaw with the same exact lightness with which I had imagined it might, and she breathed, very softly, into the small space beside my mouth before she kissed me again. She did not press the kiss into something larger than it was. She did not cross any of the lines I had told her. In the dark, I was not ready to cross today. She kissed me the way a woman kisses someone she has decided to be patient about. She kissed me, in fact, the way I had been hoping she would, with the discipline of a person who knew exactly how much restraint cost her, and who was choosing, at the same time, to spend some of that restraint on me. When she sat back, her face was the most open it had been since I had met her. "I am going to stop," she said, "before I cannot." "I know," I said. "I am," she said, very out of practice. "You are," I said, "a fast learner." She smiled. A real smile, the smile that I would, over the next few months, slowly come to understand as the smile she only did in private, with a person she had decided to be unguarded with. We sat for a long time on the sofa, hands held, foreheads occasionally touching, neither of us pushing anything. Eventually we got our flights rebooked. There was a 7 p.m. out of O'Hare, 2 seats together in coach, because the storm had filled the front cabin with rebooked first-class passengers, and we agreed to take it. We packed. She packed her small carry-on with the same efficient minimalism she did everything. I packed my camera bag and my one duffel. We checked the suite for left-behind items in the way 2 people check a room at the end of a stay that has, in some small way, redefined them. In the back of the cab to the airport, she fell asleep with her head against my shoulder. The cab smelled of vinyl and city air and very faintly, still, of her perfume. I watched the lights of Chicago move across her sleeping face for 40 minutes. She did not wake up until we hit the airport ramp. We sat together in the gate area at the same gate we had been at the night before, where this had begun. Different planes were boarding now. Different gate agents. Different set of people on canceled flights, looking up at the board with the same particular weariness. I took a picture of the empty seats where she had been reading and not reading her novel. She looked at it after I took it. "That," she said, "is a sad photograph." "It is," I said. "I will not keep it." She looked at me. "Keep it," she said. "Not for the magazine. For me." I kept it. We flew. I had the window. She had the aisle. We held hands across the empty middle seat for the entire flight. She slept again, eventually. I watched her sleep. And I watched the dark beneath the plane for a while. And I thought about how the version of me who had been sitting next to a stranger in a gate area 23 hours ago could not have predicted the version of me sitting on a plane next to the same person now, and that this kind of compression, of a stranger into a person you knew by the texture of small, honest hours, was the thing that I had been photographing for 8 years and had not, until this trip, experienced from inside. We landed at LaGuardia at 10:34 p.m. The luggage carousel was the first time we had to actively decide whether we were leaving the airport together. "I am going to take a cab home," she said, while we were waiting. "I know," I said. "I am going to text you in the morning," she said. "I know," I said. "I have a meeting on Friday I cannot move," she said. "Saturday is a closing dinner with the firm I cannot get out of. Sunday I am free. I would like to have dinner with you on Sunday." Slowly, with more light on it. "I would like that," I said. She kissed me briefly in the baggage claim of LaGuardia at 10:41 p.m. on a Wednesday night in early December, in front of a dozen strangers who had flown in from Chicago with us and who had no idea what they were watching. The kiss was brief and quiet and unconcealed, and when she stepped back, her eyes were slightly bright in a way that had nothing to do with the airport lighting. "I will text you," she said. "I will be waiting," I said. She got into a cab. I got into a different one. We went to different parts of the city. Her to a building on the Upper East Side, me to a small apartment in Brooklyn that I had not slept in for 2 weeks. And the cabs disappeared into the wet city in opposite directions, and that should have been the end of the part where we made each other a story we could trust. It was not, of course. The trusting started after. The next morning she texted me at 7:15. "Good morning. I am at my desk. I slept poorly. I think you are the reason. I will manage." I texted back at 7:17. "I slept poorly too. Same reason. Coffee is helping. So is reading your text again." She texted me 4 more times that day, briefly at exactly the intervals at which I imagined she allowed herself to break from her work. Once at 11, once at 1, once at 4:30, once at 7. By the 7th text, I had identified the rhythm. By the 10th, I had teased her about it. By the 15th, she had identified the rhythm of mine and was teasing me about it back. Sunday came. She picked me up at my apartment in a cab. She came up the 4 flights of stairs because she said she wanted to see where I lived before we went anywhere. She stood in the small main room of my apartment in her dark coat and looked, for one slow circuit, at the prints I had hung on the walls. 8 years of work, unframed, push-pinned in the way photographers actually put up their work when they live alone. And she did not say anything for a while. "You are very good," she said. "I know," I said. "I had not expected," she said, "you to be this good." The tone was not unkind. The tone was the tone of a woman who had made a decision about a person based on a long sentence in a gate area and was learning slowly what else she had decided to take on. "I am going to want to come over here a lot," she said. "I am going to want to let you," I said. We had dinner at a small place in the West Village she had picked. She held my hand under the table. She told me about the closing dinner she had survived, and the meeting on Friday she had won, and the divorce attorney she had finally, after 14 months, fired. I told her about my editor and the magazine and the assignment they wanted to send me on in February. We split a dessert because she had not, until that night, allowed herself to split a dessert with anyone in over a year. And it felt, she said quietly, like something she wanted to start doing again. I walked her to the cab afterward. She kissed me on the corner outside the restaurant, briefly, and then once more, less briefly. "I will see you Friday," she said. "That is too far away," I said. "Then come to my apartment Wednesday night," she said. "After your assignment. I will cook. Badly. You will pretend to like it." "I will not have to pretend," I said. "You have not eaten what I cook," she said. "You will be pretending. I am being honest about this so you do not, on Wednesday, find yourself surprised." "I love you a little for honesty," I said. "I love you a little too," she said. The first month was the month of slowly rearranging the shapes of 2 lives that had been built, separately, around the assumption that no one else would be in them. She made room in her apartment for the camera bag and the second toothbrush. I made room in mine for the small travel kit she kept by her side of my bed for the nights she came over after late meetings. We learned each other's schedules. We negotiated the territory where her professional discipline and my photographer's chaos had to meet. We learned which fights were real fights and which were our separate exhaustions reading each other wrong. The first real fight happened the 3rd Saturday of January. I had been gone for 4 days on a short assignment in Pittsburgh, and I came back tired and short-tempered and ready to spend a quiet evening at home. And Celine had assumed, because she was a woman who built plans around the people she loved without always remembering to ask them, that I would want to go to a small dinner at her colleague's apartment that she had RSVP'd to a week earlier. I told her I did not, in fact, want to go. She told me she had told her colleague we both would. I told her she had not, in fact, told me she had told her colleague we both would. She told me, with the slate eyes pulled all the way down to their professional setting, that she could not, on short notice, retract a yes she had given on behalf of 2 people. I told her, with the version of my voice I had spent a year and a half learning how to use, that the issue was not the dinner. The issue was that she had spoken for me without asking. She stopped. I watched her stop. She had been about to construct an entire architecture of justifications, and she had, mid-sentence, decided to abandon the architecture. "You are right," she said. That was, I noted, not what I had been expecting from the slate eyes. "I am sorry," she said. "I will call her in the morning and explain that I overcommitted. I will go alone. You will stay home and rest." "That is," I said, "a much better answer." "I know," she said. She did call her colleague in the morning. She did go alone. She came back at 10:30 p.m. with a small bag of leftovers from the host that contained, very specifically, the dish she knew I liked, and she warmed it up for me and we ate it on the couch. And she said, into her plate, quietly, "I am going to do this again. The speaking for you thing. Not because I do not respect your time. Because I am. In my whole life, structurally accustomed to being the person who decides things and then communicates them to other people. I will do this again. I will need you to keep telling me when. I said, I will keep telling you. She said, thank you. That, I learned later, was the shape of how we were going to fight. Not loudly, not by accumulation, with one person noticing the thing and naming the thing, and the other person not, in the long run, fighting the naming. It was the shape of two adults who had spent enough of their lives being unhappy to know what unhappy felt like, and who were, both of them, choosing in real time to do the work of not building it again. In February, I went to Argentina for the assignment my editor had wanted to send me on. I was gone for 2.5 weeks. We talked on the phone every other night, briefly, in the small windows where her schedule and mine and the time difference all aligned. She did not, I noticed, perform the missing me. She told me about her cases. She asked about the photographs. She told me, on the 11th night, that she had gotten home at 9 and sat in her apartment for an hour without turning on any of the lights, just because the apartment without me in it had felt, for the first time, like an apartment that had become wrong. Then she had turned on the lights and made dinner, she said, because that was the kind of feeling you sat with for an hour and then made dinner anyway. I told her I would be home in 4 days. She said, I know. And the relief in her voice was so completely undisguised that I sat in my hotel in Buenos Aires for 10 minutes after the call ended just listening to the memory of it. When I came home, she met me at JFK at 1 in the morning with 2 coffees and a face that had not been composed in 12 hours. She kissed me at the curb. She drove me back to her apartment because it was closer to the airport, and she had cleared the second drawer of her dresser the day before, and she had put my favorite tea on the shelf above the sink without telling me. I did not, that night, ask whether she was asking me to move in. She was not asking yet. She was preparing the question. I let her prepare it. She asked it in March, the same week the dog arrived. Her dog arrived in March. She had decided, 2 weeks before, that she was ready. We picked her up from a rescue in upstate New York on a Saturday morning, drove her back to the city in a borrowed car, and named her, after a long dinner discussion that I will not bore you with, Iris. Iris was a 4-year-old mixed breed of unclear origin, with a great deal of opinion and the demeanor of a French film director, although Celine insisted, gently, that she was not a replacement for Margot, only a successor, which was a distinction I came to respect. I photographed Iris a lot. I photographed Celine more. In April, the magazine ran my paper mill story. The lead photograph was the woman who had run the same machine for 31 years. The second photograph, 2 pages in, was a small image I had taken of my own apartment kitchen one morning in February, when Celine had been making coffee in one of my t-shirts, and the light through the window had hit her face in a particular way. The caption read only, "At home." The editor had asked me, when I submitted it, whether I was sure. I had said yes. Celine had said yes when I had asked her 2 weeks earlier whether she would be all right with the picture appearing somewhere. A few 100,000 people would see it. When the issue came out, she bought 12 copies. She kept 1. She sent the other 11 to people she wanted to know. In May, the woman who had been her wife sent a letter through the husband's lawyer, formally closing the last of the joint accounts. The letter contained, at the bottom, a handwritten line that said only, "I hope you are well." Celine read it once, set it on the counter, and did not respond. We did not speak about it for 2 days. On the 3rd day, over breakfast, she said, "I am well." I am not, currently, prepared to write that down for her, but I am well. And that is the version she will have to take. I said, "You are very well." She said, "I know." In July, we went back to Chicago. There was a small fellowship dinner that one of her old law school professors was hosting. I had a magazine assignment the same week in northern Indiana. We flew out together. We stayed, for the 4 nights of the trip, at the same hotel suite where this had begun. Celine asked the concierge, with no expression, whether 4012 was available. The concierge, a different one this time, a woman who did not know Celine's name, checked and said yes. On the 2nd night, I stood with her at the window of the suite and watched a clear summer sky over Chicago. The window was the same window. The city was the same city. The woman beside me was, by every important measure, not the same woman, and was, in the deeper way, exactly the same person. You said, that first night at this window, I said, that you were lonely. I asked, and you said a working hotel is not the same thing as a lonely one, but they look similar from the outside. And you said it was a fair observation. I did say that, she said. Are you still lonely? I asked. She turned to look at me, slate eyes, the hair down, the watch on the right wrist, which she still had not moved. No, she said. I am not. When did you stop? She thought about it for a moment. I think, she said, the morning you ordered breakfast in this suite without asking what I wanted. I think that was the morning. I just did not, at the time, know that it was. I looked at her face. I had been photographing it, off and on, for 7 months. I knew it now. I knew the millimeters and the half millimeters and the small line that had appeared at the corner of her mouth in May after she had laughed at something I had said. I knew the way she put on her watch in the morning, and the way her hair moved when she came out of the shower, and the precise weight of her hand when she put it on my back at night. The work of knowing her was not finished. I understood by then that the work would not be finished. Ever. That the work of knowing a person you had decided to know was a work without a deadline, and that I had picked the right person to do that work with. Celine, I said. Yes. I am glad the board flipped to red. She was very quiet for a moment. She turned her face back toward the window. The summer city, lit up below us, indifferent and ordinary, like every other city we had ever stood at a window in. I am glad too, she said. I would like, very much, for the board to flip to red occasionally, for the rest of our lives, in places where we are stuck and can only keep each other company. That is a long-term plan, I said. I am, she said, an attorney. I draft long-term plans for a living. I laughed. She turned back to me. The hand came up, the way it had come up on the sofa on the morning after the storm, light on my jaw. Quinn? She said. Yes? I love you. The whole sentence, with more light on it. I love you, I said. The same. She kissed me slowly at the window of a suite on the 40th floor of a hotel in Chicago, and in the dark glass behind her I could see the reflection of 2 people who had agreed, 8 months earlier, to share a hotel room because the weather had decided their plans for them, and who were still, in every important way, choosing the version of the night that had begun with a closed book and a long sentence about a woman whose jaw had moved. We flew home 2 days later, together. Same plane, the same hands held over the same empty middle seat. She slept the first half of the flight. I watched her sleep. The board over our gate when we landed said on time in green letters. That, I thought, is also fine. But the red ones were the ones that had given me her.